What is happening, ladies and gents? Welcome to another episode of Have a Chat with Ray and Stat. I am Ray. Stat's sitting next to me.
We've done this 4 times already.
We've done this a lot, but that's because we decided to do another episode because the show was just going so well.
Yeah, no, also the recording, the one recorded at the right time.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. Ladies and gents, welcome back. We're in the same clothes. We have the same croaky voices. And that's because we got Jeremy and Jackie in the room again. Well, at the same time, because we just had such a great time talking to you two that we just wanted to keep it going.
Welcome, peeps. Again,
Thank
part
you.
2.
Thank you for having
Part
us.
dos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what's happening, guys? Jackie?
Not much.
So the only thing that's been happening in the last 10 minutes is I don't have the baby. That's all I know.
And Joseph still doesn't know how to switch cameras.
And I forgot to press record. We're still going.
Again?
No. We're good now. We've done this like 3 times.
I was about to walk out and say no.
Yeah,
that's it.
same.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, look at me. I look fantastic. Go back to that other angle, Joseph. I look really good.
Oh, no, it's good now. It's good now.
What happened?
It was.
Oh,
it
it's
was
the black screen again? Oh
Yeah,
my
it's the black
goodness,
screen.
can you stop with that thing? I need you to watch that camera, okay? The whole time.
Joseph,
You switch.
Jeremy is not talking.
Listen,
Surely
honestly,
it's not that hard.
listen, do we fire him on here?
You switch with him, see if you can do it.
Yeah, right.
All right, start switching. He's going to see if he can switch better than Joseph. Come sit here, mate. Welcome, ladies and gents, to another episode of Have a Chat with Ray and Stat. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like it, ring the bell, do all that stuff so you never miss an episode. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
I see, yeah.
Show him.
That was.
Go again.
I don't know if I want to.
That was bad. That was bad. How hard is this? That's good. It's so good.
Bro, you can't switch. You can't talk. What are you doing here?
I don't know.
Listen, I'm just going to yell from here. I'm down for like sitting here and that, but just don't let Joe talk.
Yeah, fair call. Yeah. Get out. Go over there, switch back.
I'm doing so well.
Well, Stat, honestly, you were.
That was very
So,
good.
you know, you're going to be switching, like, when we can't have this guy.
Yay. No, honestly, when you said switch it to Jazz during that time, I hadn't done it before, but I didn't know which button was for which. And then the second I saw it, so I genuinely went to Jackie. I didn't know what I was doing. So I went Jackie first, I go, that's Jackie, then that's Jeremy, then I was easy.
Good job.
But like, if I was switching it up, I think it'd be good for like the first 5 minutes. Like I got off when I did. After that, it would be just chaos.
Nah, it's good. Listen, it's a harder job than you'd think because you have to stay focused on it.
That's true. I think Joseph is just enjoying the conversation.
He's enjoying it way too much. That's the problem. But nah, we're back. Yeah.
So, because it's part 2, how was your week, guys? How's the things going? Now, I ask you a question. I get it serious for a bit. So,
Sorry, before we do, I just want to say we got good Stat tonight. Like, we sometimes get bad Stat where he can't be bothered being here and he's doing a raspelano.
I think it's because
Can you
like
please
we're
translate?
here.
Yeah, raspelano is like, because he has to.
Yeah,
he's forced.
he's like, he's not bothered.
And you can see it in his face. He's normally sitting like this with his wallet, like, yeah, you know, whatever. But now, like, we got good Stat. Anyway, sorry, ask your question.
you remind me of
Can't
the
even
wallet. I want to
find
get it
his
from the car. No. Was going to ask you, in terms of Epic, this is your first year running Epic.
Yep.
I've changed the tune a lot. I think we've laughed a lot, so I thought I'd just change it up. Thanks, bro.
It's a new episode, so no one will know what we. Was
Yeah.
speaking
So
about.
how's nah. With Epic, it's your first year running Epic. Like for those who know what Epic is, it's the teens ministry, the year 7s to year 12s. How have you found that in the first year, both of you? How have you found the challenges that were in it? I don't know if you may have discussed this on another podcast before, but now that you've actually been in it, you've been doing it for the last 9 months or so. How have you actually found it?
Yeah, I don't think we have discussed it. You haven't been on since you took over Epic, eh?
I've been on that once.
That once, but you were very
never-
early on. You weren't
never
really
spoke
into
about
it.
it.
No. How is it?
It's good. It's challenging.
Mm.
I guess the teenagers these days obviously face more struggles than what we did when we were in high school. But I think one thing that kind of helped me along the journey or helped me in preparing like my lessons is that teens don't necessarily need preaching. They don't need a 3-point outline with alliteration and all that kind of stuff. They need teaching. They don't need a sermon. They need to be taught an application, how they can apply it to their lives.
Can you explain that? Because for people that aren't aware of the difference between preaching at someone and teaching them, can you explain the difference there? Like, what are you attacking more?
Well, I guess it's the different way you prepare. Like, obviously, I've preached on a Sunday where you're preaching more than you're teaching. Whereas when you're preaching, you're going more into the verses of your text. You're diving deep into the meanings, the definitions, and whatnot. You're going like straight into the text. What you're doing, but teaching is more. It's not as much diving into the text, but more applying it to your life. So you're taking the principle, your message, you're bringing it up, but then you're more so spending most of your time applying it, how they can apply, give them practical ways that they can live out that verse.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say something. No, okay, fair enough. That's good to know. How about you, Jax? What's it like being the leader in Epic? Is it met your expectations? Is it harder than you thought it was going to be?
I feel like for me, I haven't like fully been able to like experience it yet. Only because when we took Epic on, I was pregnant. And then I was probably in Epic for like maybe 4-ish weeks, or I don't know, like I wasn't in there a lot, and then I had the baby, so then I was out of Epic, and only now I'm starting to come back. So I guess I don't know yet.
That's a fair call. It's a fair call because
if I'm being honest,
it's an interesting ministry, and I'm glad you brought it up, Stat, because I didn't realize we were going to talk about it.
I feel like though we've got camp coming up, so I'm gonna try and use that to connect with the girls more and just get to know them on a better level. Because if we're being honest, I don't really know a lot of the girls. Like I didn't grow up at Faith. And like obviously like I've gotten to know them on like a surface level, but I guess like as the years go on and as we get more involved,
to be fair to you, I don't think a lot of the older girls know the younger girls. Like that's just how it is. You're so separated by age and ministry that you don't really get to know the younger people unless you're actively seeking that out.
True.
You said that they're dealing with a lot rougher stuff than what we were. Did you notice that instantly?
I wouldn't say I noticed it, but definitely just you more see it. Like everyone knows the stuff that we're dealing with today and everything that's going on like is a lot different to what it was when we were teenagers. Like I entered Epic, how old am I now? 26, like 13 years ago. Like the world was a very different place in terms of the agendas it was pushing back then is nowhere what it's pushing now. So they have different struggles. Yes, you have some struggles that are the same, but I guess they have different ones than what we had to deal with when we were their age.
It's crazy, bro. Like how much has changed, right? I was watching just a normal news outlet say that so much has changed since 2015. So like they're even noticing how much of a shift it's been in such a short amount of time. It's only been 7 years. Like everyone is attributing it to 2015. They're saying that's when the shift happened, and that's only 7 years ago. The world is completely different compared to what 7 years ago was.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's... Yeah. No, I mean, it's all like that's true. Because I remember obviously being in Epic and having those different types of struggles that, I would have had coming through. Definitely can imagine what it would be like, now with the day and age. Like for me, I remember, you talk about how much crazy it is. Like I remember going to school and I was in year 7 and I had a guy in year 8 wearing an earring and I was like, hey, this is like, it's not going to get worse than this. Like I was year 7, I'm thinking, man, this world is so bad if people in year 8 are getting earrings. That was back then, 2007, 2008. Then like the next year, like someone in my year got a tat and I was like, I'm 13, 14 years old, the people getting tattoos, like this is crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how much it's declined, like how society's declined in everything.
Even the access to stuff, like we didn't have smartphones when we were in year 7.
Yeah.
We had little
Nokia 9110s and Snake and Bounce and that.
The fun we had on our phone was Bluetooth hacking into someone's phone, setting alarms. But now, like, they have everything at their fingertips.
It's just weird though because, like, we did, like Stan was saying, we did experience some pretty bad stuff. Like there were guys in our grades that were dealing drugs and things like that. But the teens now, it's more of a personal attack than it is a like you don't have to tell a kid taking drugs is wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's stock standard. Everyone knows that. Don't do drugs. But right now what they're dealing with is, am I who God made me? Am I actually a guy? Am I actually like it's a personal attack. It's more on who they are as a human being rather than it is on the externals that can affect them. They're dealing with depression, mental illness, all that stuff. Like it's a scarier attack.
Yeah, for sure. So when you, as you're coming into the role, more of a Jeremy question because like you're still trying to find your feet in it. But just for you, when you were coming into being an epic leader, were you freaking out at like the different challenges you were going to face, or was there like a massive stress that you brought upon yourself with it, or did you kind of just feel like, you know what?
No, I was stressing hard like last year towards the latter end of the year. Just, I guess more so because I knew how big this year was going to be. Like I was changing my role at work. I was obviously becoming a dad, taking over ministry full time. Like I was stressing off my head about doing it. But I guess, and the other thing was I had never had to give a devotion to teenagers before. So like, yeah, I had preached in church and I kind of, that was my style of preaching. I found that style, but then having to just completely do a 360 on that at the flick of a switch to then change it to a more...
In what way?
Just obviously just the way you preach. Like I'm not going to preach a Sunday message to a teenager on a Friday because that's not what they need. They don't need like I said, they don't need a 3-point outline alliterated.
It's adapting, right?
Yeah, it's just adapting. And so like I was lucky enough that I had the opportunity to have a few teaching times last year with Mark, and I struggled hard. Like those, you ask Mark, like I remember I finished one lesson, I was like, what was that? Like that was the worst lesson I've ever given in my life. But then I guess I kind of just spoke with Dad, and he just said, look, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like you don't have to always come up with something new. And honestly, like I've done 2 series this year so far. The first one was just choices you have to make, and I found that it was a book on my bookshelf that was literally choices that you have to make as a teenager. And so I was like, all right, brilliant. That's my 10-week series. Then I found another one. It was the teenage years of Jesus Christ. And it's like, all right, studying that and then using that as my curriculum rather than having to come up with it all on my own. It's like, all right, what resources can I use to make it easier for me to then give it to the teenagers?
You've been in Epic for 9 months now.
Yep.
Like as the leader, you've been there for years prior. What's the biggest issue teenagers are facing right now? Like if you had to talk to a parent, what are you telling them the biggest issue is at the moment?
Wow, that's a hard question. But the biggest issue is probably, I would say, them knowing why they believe what they believe. In a world which questions everything that you believe, them being able to, okay, I believe it because it's for me. It's not because my parents told me or because I go to church. It's I believe it. And like the world is always going to say, obviously with the whole gender stuff, the world pushing gender fluidity and all that kind of stuff.
These are genders, yeah.
But with us as Christians, like, no, it's male and female. And it's just them being able to stand up for what they believe in and then actually know what it is that they believe.
Isn't that interesting that you and I do kids ministries? We do children's church and Bible club and all that, right? At Bible club level and children's church level, you are teaching the kid the foundation of the faith, right? You're teaching them the stock standard stories, but you're trying to make it real to them, trying to make them understand that this is a legitimate thing that we believe. And then when you move them into the teenage years, you're trying to say, okay, all that legitimate stuff that you learnt back then is real, but this is why it's real to you. That is a very interesting switch because I don't think a lot of parents see it that way because they grew up in church, they know all the stories, they know everything, they're good. But to make it a personal thing, I think it's awesome you caught on to that because I think we're seeing that in Elevate. A lot of people trying to figure out, well, why do I believe this to be legit?
Yeah. And I think it's important that in every aspect, I think in every kind of ministry, such as teaching ministries, from kids to teens to even young adults, well, I do a lot of my serving there. I think the most important is going back to basics. We learned that in the devotion elevator retreat. Zach, just going back to basics with your Christian walk, with your reading, with your praying. And it's like we know it. We know the basics. We know what to do all the time, and then we always seem to neglect it. We always seem, why are we struggling? Because we neglect the basics. But I think in every age category, it's so important to go back to basics, because those basics aren't necessarily basics. That's your groundwork. That's your life. Those basics are the most important thing that you do to continue in the Christian walk. Yeah. So, for me, like we find that like with the young adults now, I find one of the distractions with the young adults, I know for myself, is just different distractions that are out there. Just life in general. You know, obviously the biggest one being like social media and like TikTok, Facebook, Insta, Snapchat, all that stuff. I think even with young adults, I feel like that's something that can be a thing.
Yeah, but I don't want to even like blame it on that. Like, but we use actual reasons as our excuses as well. I mean, teenagers are using HSC. Couldn't show up to church this Friday because I was studying. You know, they use, I got a second job. Young adults, I've got to go to uni. I've got to buy a house. Like we always find a different priority that's going to stuff us eventually.
Yeah. And I think it's just how you manage those priorities. But I'll bring it back to going back to basics, seeing what God really wants and then managing it that way.
Well, it's what I've been honing in on this year really is, thanks Joseph, is it all comes down to your relationship with God, your personal relationship. Yes, you can have family devotions, or yes, you can be in you can be in church every Sunday, be in Bible club or Epic every Friday. But what it really comes down to is your relationship with God the rest of the week. And so that's what every lesson I've come back to is always, hey, there's always the point of your relationship with God comes first.
And Jackie, you had something, because I remember when you told us your testimony on Talk to Me, that had a big part to play in that, was figuring out Christianity for yourself. It wasn't about the church you were attending or the people that were around you. It was about your personal relationship with God. Can you elaborate on that? Sorry, I know I sort of sat there. I thought you were grasping what I was getting, but
No, I get.
Like, do you see it? Because was that when you were a teenager when all that was going down?
No, that was like when I was a
You're young adult.
Yeah.
So can you see that transferring to a teenager though? Like the struggle that they would probably deal with there? Christianity being personal rather than it being a family
I think
decision.
like when you're, I guess, because like when you're a teenager, you're living under your parents' house, you're living under their rules. You going to church, like if you're in a Christian family, you have to, because you're going where your parents are going. So I feel like from when you're young and then to when you're a teenager, everything's sort of like set up for you. But at the point of being a teenager, like you're trying to think, okay, why am I doing all these things? And then when you become a young adult, then it's like, okay, if the foundation is rocky when you're a teenager, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say like
the foundation you said in your teen years
yes,
prepares you then
Yeah,
for
if
your
you're not building on that
yes.
foundation from when you were a kid, right?
yeah,
Yep.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so
But then I also want to say like, even like for me now, like obviously I'm still a young adult, but now like I'm a mum, and like sometimes I find myself like using the excuse of like, okay, I've got to pay attention to Isla, or like I've got to do things around the house that like I neglect my relationship with God. And I know like God gives me grace in this new season of me navigating my life as a mum, but then also at the same time, like I can't use the excuse of like, okay, I'm a mum now, like I've got all these other priorities that I can't give God the time. Yeah, so
it's interesting because we talk about this all the time, like constantly on the podcast, how your priorities shapes the person you are and where your relationship with God is at. I mean, all 5 of us in this room have different responsibilities, different priorities, and different things that we're dealing with. Some obviously more important than others, you with the kid, but like let's not neglect the fact Stat's got work all day.
yeah.
I've got studies, work, this, that. Jeremy's got fatherhood, work, church, ministry, all this stuff. I do more than that, champ. Like, relax, all right? All right? Don't mouth off on the camera, champ. Don't mouth off. I got this bloke over here. He'll catch you every day. He'll catch you every time.
Listen, knowing Joseph's track record, he won't catch me. Don't worry about it.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that no matter what stage of life you're in, it's very easy to come up with an
Yeah.
excuse.
Yeah.
And if you don't personally decide to prioritize like your time with God or anything in life, if you don't, like if I don't prioritize my relationship with Jeremy, like that will fall to the wayside. Like you just have to like make a decision for yourself to say, okay, I'm going to set this time aside. Well,
Yeah, there you go. Very interesting. Very good.
The mic's in your face to continue the conversation.
I'm happy with what I've heard.
look, to be honest, I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. Because, and I think that, well, going back to the theme of what we were talking about on the last episode, that's why Elevate Retreat's so important. That's why Epic Camp's so important. These conferences are so important. Like, I think it's easy to get lost in the fact they're just church events.
Yeah.
And we have to go because it's just another church event, rather than realizing, hold on a minute, maybe this is something I need to reset and refocus and reprioritize. Because, mate, if
Good one.
What the hell was that?
That was our
that was
Christmas
the on-air
gift.
sign,
Wow.
yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, all right, mate. Fair enough.
No, but if you listen to the sermons from Elevate Retreat, once they go up on the chat, which they'll be up at this point already, they were so simple. Like there was nothing special about what he said, to be honest. He gave us, mate, stop lying, read your Bible, prioritize things properly, set your spiritual life. Like there was like nothing, no new.
It was nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's like you said, like going back to the basics. But it's also like if you're not doing the thing, like when you talk about the will of God, like there's already a set out will of God for us to do daily. If we're not doing those basics, then wow.
You disgusting piece of crap.
I've been burping all night and I just had to do it once.
Hey, respect.
I don't even know what I'm saying now.
You're talking about the will of God.
Yeah, like the set out basics where you have to read your Bible, pray, like focus on your relationship with Him. Like if you're not going to do those simple things, then
Yeah, if you can't
Yeah.
act upon the general will of God, He's not going to give you His specific will.
That's very good. Say it again.
If you're not going to obey His general will, He's not going to give you His specific will for you.
That's important, man. Like that's big. It really is, because everyone is trying to figure out, what do you have for me next?
Yeah.
Who's the girl I'm going to marry? What's the next job you want me to have? What's the house you want me to buy? Do you want me to move in this direction with my life? He ain't going to give that to you if you're not obeying everything else.
I'm very silent because I'm taking everything in. It's very good. I have nothing to say.
so
genuinely,
basically
it's
just go back to the basics, right, Stat?
You know what?
There we go.
It's very simple.
You know, maybe that might be the next series I do in Epic, Back to Basics.
I'm pretty sure that's what Mark did when he first took over Elevate, was let's get back to basics. Like, let's sort it out. And it was actually a bigger draw than you would have thought, because I guess you don't realize when you grow up in a church, life is very standard. It becomes autopilot. I say it a lot when I preach. I don't know why, but like life gets onto autopilot very quickly, especially when you grow up in a church and you've been doing everything we've been doing for all those years. It becomes autopilot, so you forget about how simple it was to read your Bible, pray, and how beautiful that experience is. You know what I mean?
Do you know, just talking about going back to basics, I found that mostly hit me harder when I was doing discipleship with someone. Because you're literally helping them and guiding them through the basics of Christianity.
Yeah, and it's like you're telling them, okay, do this, but then it's like,
Oh.
okay, am I actually doing this for myself?
That's right. So I'd be teaching them, oh, you got to be doing this. And then it would just, as I'm saying it, would just strike me. And I was
That
like,
was
am I
me.
doing this?
Every week preparing for my Epic lesson
Yeah.
is like sitting there going, am I preparing this for them or am I preparing this for me? Like it was just like every week was just like, you idiot, like get back.
Yeah,
in
100%.
line.
That's what I had personal experience when I was doing discipleship with someone else. Where I'd be doing it and I'd just stop and then I'll just like be gutted of thinking, man, how have I gone and neglected this aspect of my Christian walk?
Can I tell you, that's why that's my favorite class to teach. I'm doing discipleship right now with one of the boys. That is my favorite thing about it, is I am constantly being told by God, hey, you're telling him to read his Bible every day. What are you doing? You're constantly telling him, hey, are you praying? What are you doing? And that's honestly what God dealt with me. He dealt with me a bit with that at the Elevate retreat. So Mark had a commitment wall put up. So we basically taken paper axes, because our theme was iron sharpens iron. I know, that was good.
Right.
We had
Forgot you
these
a
papers.
dog.
Sorry?
Forgot you had a dog.
Yeah, he's pretty cute. You want to meet him?
No,
Yeah, I didn't think so. Anyway, so we had these paper axes.
not cute. By the way.
Why not? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not offended in the slightest. So he had us put up these paper axes onto this commitment board. And the point of that commitment board was for us to remain accountable. We don't have our names on them, but every time we see that board in the Elevate room, we have to remember the commitment we made. And what God worked on me at this retreat, very personal here, is be happy and content with the wait. And I think it's hard to get to that point where you are so happy in your spiritual walk with the Lord, where you're doing the basics day in, day out, serving Him day in, day out. And every time you ask Him for something or for a progression in your life, He says, no, not yet. No, not yet. So you have to be comfortable sticking with those basics, especially when life doesn't seem like it's moving in any direction.
And I think it's the hardest part, patience. I think with anyone that is going through the Christian walk, developing patience has been one of the hardest things along the Christian walk. Because as you're going through your Christian journey, as you're going through your walk with God, and as you're going through life in general, you see things happening left, right, and center to people that you think, man, like, what the heck? Because sometimes you look and you're thinking, like, I remember I got to a point like years ago, I was like, man, I'm doing ABC, I'm doing this for God, I'm doing this for God. It was never I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it because I want eyes on me, but I'm doing it for God, and I'm like, man, I'm just not seeing, I'm not just getting what I want. Because God hasn't shown me the right time yet.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment of, oh, when's my time coming? It's God who's molding me, shaping me to get me ready for that next season. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I found patience to be the hardest thing for a very long time there. Just for that reason that it's hard when you see something else happening for someone, or seeing something happening to someone else, when you think, man, I would love for that to happen to me.
It's funny, I had that conversation with one of the younger boys today. I took one of the younger boys out for a coffee after Elevate Retreat. And he actually asked me the question. He goes, bro, I don't want to be... yeah, all good? I don't want to be, like... He said to me, I don't want to be, like, prying or anything. But he barks at anything, bro. He goes, do you feel jealous of your mates like Jeremy and Jackie, where they're near your age and their life looks like it's developed so much more, or when one of the boys gets a misses and their life seems to be progressing but your life has stood still? And I said to him, I go, well, that's a two-folded question where, yeah, of course there are times where you're like, man, I wish I had that and I wish I could move forward. But I think being in God's will is knowing that they're not ahead of you in life. They are just where God has them right now. God is still working on other stuff in your life, and you've got to be comfortable with His timing. Because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves of, my mate's married, why am I not married? What's he doing right that I'm not? No. If you're in God's will, then you're not doing anything wrong. He's just telling you to wait until it's His time. Otherwise, if I got married right now, I'm out of God's will.
Yeah, and that's the whole part of patience. But you got to remember as well, you got to accept. There's patience, there's also the acceptance of allowing God to just do His work. And I think if you accept it, you say, all right, God, I'm completely yours, and I have faith in you that you will come through in area A, B, C, D. And then you start living your life very content with that thought. In time, God will start saying, okay, I can see you've been working on this area. Because you've been working on this, and I believe you come through. Lean on me for this. Well, I'm going to show you here. Yeah. But I think it's the patience. You have to be content with that. You got to be content with accepting that. If like Jeremy's younger than me, So when I look at Jeremy, I'm like, man, he's done well because he's honored God his whole life, A, B, C, D. But I'm not Jeremy. Jeremy's not me.
No, but I'm also saying it's not that you did. Well, I was trying to say that it's not that you did the wrong thing either. It's that God has said, "State, you're not getting married yet, or you're not getting this far in your career yet, because I have something I want to teach you before I get you there." Yeah.
And everyone has a wilderness.
That's right, and some of them are a lot longer than others. And I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves. Bro, you look at it, my dad was married at 21. He expected me to be married at that age. I'm like, bro, I was 21. I was still dressing up like a Jedi going to Star Wars events. You know what I'm saying?
Rumor has you still do.
It's been about 3-4 years, bro. No, but like, you're right, Jej, is that every single one of us has to wait on God's timing and then stop putting that pressure on yourself.
It's just like Moses. He was in the wilderness for 40 years before God called him to then lead the children of Israel.
I also think that like when you're at different stages of your life, you have an ability to serve in different ways. So for us as a married couple, now parents, we can't serve like we did when we were like single or even like when we were married. So I feel like people forget that even, I know, like, I probably like thought about this when I was single, like, oh, how, like, I don't have a boyfriend, or I'm not married. But like, you've got to remember that, like, you can't waste that season of your singleness worrying that, okay, I want all of this in my life, that you're missing out on the opportunities where you can be serving in a different capacity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if we were married and say we went on that Outback trip or whatever, if we were married then and had a baby, we wouldn't have gone on that trip. But because, like, God timed that for when we were both single and we had the desire to serve in that capacity and we could, like, we were just able to. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
I get exactly what you're saying, and I think too many Christians do that, or too many people in general do that, where they're looking to the future. What's next? What's my next big milestone? What's the next thing that I'm shooting for? Instead of just being like, no, hold on, let me live in the present for now. Let me thank God for the present for now, and let me see what He has for me right now. Because you're right, all of us are serving at completely different capacities. You know, you're focusing on being a mum right now and taking care of this thing, while Jeremy is focusing on being a youth leader. Stat is focusing on doing all the odd ministries because he can. He's got all the time to do that right now. I'm constantly there. I had this conversation with Pastor the other week. Man, I'm constantly at church because I can be.
Yeah, exactly.
But I told him, I go, listen, the day I start working on a family or start seeing someone, you got to know I've got to pull back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not fair to that relationship I'm trying to build or whatever it is that's coming next.
You said something very important, just enjoying the season you're in. I think that's the most important. And it comes back to the whole accepting of it and everything else, because there are so many people that you see that are not grateful for the season they're in. They just find that because they look at so many other people and where they're at, and some people that are younger, some people that are older, and they look like, why aren't there yet? And then there's this begrudging feeling that they feel. And I think it comes back to accepting that God's will for everyone is obviously very different, you know? I think once people start to accept that and then start saying, you know what, God, I've let my mind be so focused on this that I'm going to start focusing on things that you want, on your time, your ministries I can be part of, being more in the Word, being at church more, or whatever it is, or being able to minister to someone else that is, you know, like a younger person coming through in the next generation, or spending time with someone I can get wise counsel off. Like, I think once I start doing those things and I start seeing the work in that, and they've accepted that this is what they need to be doing, or whatever else that, like, I've just rambled off. In time, they'll learn to be like, all right, the faith they have in God will start to go back to where it used to be and start to increase again, because they've parked their doubts and their fears that they've had before and said, oh God, I'm now just focused on you. I'll do whatever you want, and in your timing, once you've molded me to who you want me to be, I'll know that you'll show me that person. If that's what it is, or if I'm doing ABC, then in work, you'll show me the next career path.
You know, can I ask Joe, if you can speak, bro? Can I get your thought on this? You're in a room with people in completely different stages of life to what you are right now, where you're starting out on the whole adulthood thing. I mean, you just got your first real job. What's it looking like for a guy your age, seeing so many above him, and seeing where your life should be, could be? How does it feel knowing your season of life compared to those who might be, you know, older than your age?
Well, to be fair, like 2 years ago when I got out of school and I went through that whole, what do you call it? The whole slump, if you want to call it, of not working. It really hit a bit, and seeing when my friends getting jobs like my age, seeing that I was still a bit lower, everyone getting at that. But yeah, I think it was God's timing, because I knew He was trying to get to me at something, and still working on that to this day. Like, the Elevate Retreat really helped, and seeing other people, everyone around here, Jeremy and Jackie with Epic, Nathaniel with what he does at church does a lot, you with everything you do, it's really encouraging to show you see other people doing things, but it's just really helpful to see how people are working in the church and everything with how they are with their walk with God and everything. If that makes sense.
Saying everything a lot.
Yeah.
I get it.
I think one thing that even you just mentioned it there, you said about what your life should be. I think that's something we should never think or have that desire of what my life should be, because ultimately we have no control over what our life is going to be like, what the Lord's going to give to us, what journey He has for us. And I think it's important to not look at what's happening around you, but rather to look what's happening within you. I went through the same thing. It was like, how can you come back to church? You're one of the only boys that's married. But to me, it was during my time at Bible college. All my mates had girlfriends. All of them were engaged during Bible college and were married like 3 to 4 months outside of finishing college. And I guess but for me, it was just like, okay, that's their journey that they're on.
Yeah.
But I knew that my journey was not the same. As in, for them, they knew, all right, we're going to get married, go into full-time ministry. Whereas for me, it was, no, I'm coming back home. I'm going to study. That didn't last long. But I'm going to be in the secular world and then doing ministry as best I could. So I think we should never look at life about what my life should be like, but rather it should just be, okay, this is my journey. As you said, it's our wilderness time. Could take however many years. Like I said, Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years before he got to leadership. Joseph, in the Bible, he was in prison for numerous years before he was then elevated to second in charge. But what you see is they weren't moaning and complaining during those times. With Joseph, he was given the opportunity to interpret the dreams. He took the opportunities while he was in jail. He didn't just sit there and go, woe is me, I shouldn't be here, this is dumb. He didn't give up on God, and that's probably something we should be encouraging others with, is like, hey, okay, yes, it might not be your time right now, but your time is coming.
I think comparison kills us.
Yeah.
I think it really affects us negatively, in a big way. We're constantly looking at each other saying, how can I be better than, how can I get to that point? Or why are they there and I'm not? What did they do right that I didn't? When it's just right. I mean, we joke about it all the time, obviously, because we have a laugh. But when you actually look at it for real, you start to realize when you start comparing to others, it kills you, because that's all you end up doing is, mate, they've got this, they've got that. What am I doing wrong? And you start blaming yourself when you don't realize, hold on, no. God's trying to teach you something during this specific time.
But that's the devil.
Mm.
That's the devil.
But then on the other hand, like, you never know what other people are saying to you. Like, you are looking at my life going, oh, I wish I had that. But then there are some things where it's like, well, I wish I had that with Ray's.
Yeah.
It's just like, you can never really compare, because someone might be comparing their life to yours, wishing, man, I wish I had Ray's life.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to just get at is it becomes a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it eats at you. It eats at you because there's always the next thing. And I think it becomes covetousness at the end of the day, because, mate, you guys have a family, you got a kid, you got great jobs, you got a great ministry at church, but there's something you guys don't have. And you're looking at whoever's above you and you're like, oh, okay, I want that.
And it can also even be like looking back and being like, man, if I wasn't married, or if I wasn't, like, not in a like bad way, but like, sometimes I think like, oh, like, how do I say this without sounding bad? But
say it bluntly, because I get what you're saying. Like, does it happen where you start looking back and thinking, man, like, I could have done more, or I wish I was there?
Yes. I like, what am I trying to say? There was one time I was driving and I was just like, man, if we didn't have a family and we could just drop all our plans, like, we could serve in that capacity. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yes, you can be at that point where people are looking and saying like, oh, I wish I had that. But then even if you're at that point, sometimes you do look back and you're like,
Do I really want that? Like,
Yeah, not so much like, do I really want that? But it's like,
What more could I have done with that
yes,
time I had?
yes, yeah. Like, did I really have to waste all my singleness trying to think like, oh, I want a boyfriend, oh, I want to be married? Like,
Because that's the funny
Yeah.
part is that, like, Jeremy, you've said it to me before. You spend, I'm not saying you in particular, but people will spend all that time saying, I want this next thing. I want,
Yes.
and I
and
fall
then
into
you
that
get
trap.
to that point, and then it's like, wow, I just wasted all that time when I could have
Just wanting the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And we all fall into that. I've done that countless times, but I think it's appreciating, like you're saying, appreciating the time God has given you right now, utilizing it to its full potential, and then going to the next thing. Because I'm telling you, because right now, I can't spend 18 hours at church on a day or 12 hours at church on a day when I've got a wife and kid at home.
Yeah.
God's given me that now. I'm cool to do that now. I can spend that 4 or 5 hours I need to watching lectures and doing my assignments and all that stuff because he's given me that time now. So what am I doing? Wasting my time hoping for the next phase if this phase is still there.
that's what it is. And you got to find that point of just enjoying it and
And like
being
you said, Stat, like being content.
be content.
Yeah.
You have to be content. Because I know it happened for me. Like I used to look around all the time, but it started for me when I was like in school. I was like, man, this guy's got a girlfriend. This guy's got a boyfriend. Man, like I like that. And I was like 14, 15. Like you look at it, you think, man, like you feel like kind of left out back in when you're in school. If you related to the teens for a second, you think, oh, they've got this or they've got like a like. But it can be with anything. Like you can be covetous over anything, right? Then you start growing up, and then like I started growing up, I say things like, man, people getting married, engaged, whatever, and I'm like, you know what? And I used to get very upset about it. And I got to a point where I was like 22, 23, and I was like, well, you know what? Like, I didn't care. Or why am I sulking? Hello, little one. But why am I sulking? Why am I getting upset and getting like all?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? And I stepped out of this like spiral. Cause I was going, kind of had me going downward mental spiral, thinking, but why am I so compressed and big on this thing? Like, imagine if I had someone now, I wouldn't be able to do anything for him.
Yeah.
So why am I stressing something about something I want something and I can't even take care of it? You know, and I was like, you know what, God, I'm just going to leave it to you. And I know that whenever God wants to have that for me next, if it's, again, your career, whatever, I'll bring it, I'll know that I've done my part where God's had me and I've enjoyed where God's had me and I'm going to move to this next phase and then get to that next phase and then just continue with that accepting and then just going from there. I think that's the most important part. You just got to be content.
I like
That's what it comes down to.
the verse in Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven.
Yeah.
As in, there's a season for everything, and everyone's going to be in a different season of life. No one's in the same boat with you. No one's in the same season of life as you. We're on a separate journey. We all have different seasons, and we just need to accept that and enjoy the season we're in, where it says, the time to be born, time to die, time to plant, time to pluck up that which is planted. There's a season that things are going to
Everyone to
happen
do it,
in different seasons. You're going to go through a season where you are being planted somewhere. You're going to go through a season where you're growing. You're going to go through a season where then you're being plucked up.
Sorry, we've got to take a look at this.
I think she agrees with me.
Get her in that shot, mate. There she is. Hey, cutie. Little nap, ready to party again.
Hey, Baba.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
But I said that when you were sleeping.
She said, be content in that season you're in.
You're a very wise little baby. Must be the Asian. in you.
What was the accent like? What was the accent?
Like mine.
No, but
That was very aggressive, but calm down.
no, but Jez, you're right, and I'll never forget what your dad told me after I got into the car accident. He came over, visited, and he said, "People tend to forget about the years between the ages of 12 and the ages of 30 that Jesus had. What was he doing all that time? He was preparing for the ministry. He was preparing for that season that God had for him. So in that time period, he was a carpenter. He learnt his trade. He was studying the word. He was becoming more of the man that he needed to be to start that ministry. And we need to stop forgetting about those 18 years of hard work that get to that next point. Some, like you said, some people are there for a lot longer than others.
Funny enough, that's actually the series I'm going through now with Epic. I'm going through it's called The Teenage Years of Jesus Christ, and it's that one verse that says, and Jesus increased in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and man. Like that summed up his teenage years, those silent years that we don't read about. But as you said, he grew, he learnt, he grew in wisdom, he grew in maturity, he grew in favour with God, he grew in favour with man. He was subject to his parents. He had that skill. He was a carpenter. It was that time of development, but it started at a young age. Like he wasn't, as you said, many people forget that he was a young boy. We just automatically assume, oh, Jesus, 30-year-old. You know, we forget about that time of growth.
100%. Well, mate, is that anything else before we wrap this up?
Mate. Let's wrap it up.
Mate, this was a great session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for jumping onto the podcast with us again. Jackie.
That's right, we were forced.
Honestly, when are you not forced? You poor things. Bro, let him be, bro. Don't force people,
Bro,
cousin.
we have a family. This
You know what I
is
mean?
our history now.
They're not single. They don't have these priorities anymore where they can just do whatever, go wherever they want.
Just drop all our plans for you.
Yeah,
Okay, you came over for dinner. We had a good time. I'm sorry you didn't get to watch the Queen's funeral that no one cares about. Shanae told me off over the weekend for not caring about the Queen because the last episode we ripped into it.
Look, to be honest, I probably didn't care about it because I watched The Crown.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway,
Anyways,
I didn't force you to do talk to me. You didn't want to do talk to me.
yeah,
You did have a
no.
chat. There you go.
thank you.
Do talk to me next.
Yeah.
Jax, where the people finding you online?
At Jackie Rose. And if you follow me, you follow me. If you don't, that's fine.
Nice, Jeremy.
Jeremy Youssef, Instagram. Follow me.
What's that?
He needs the followers.
I need the followers, please.
We need to get those numbers up for you, mate. You just follow me at church, man.
Find Stat at Church. Ladies and gents, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You know where I'm at, RayHadad97. You know where to find us, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those places, YouTube. We'll see you next week.